Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Hardik Patel and we are going to talk about different types of tables which can be created in Snowflake. So basically Snowflake provides us three different types of tables which you can create and store the data. So we are going to talk about all those three types of tables, and then we also see how we can create those three different types of tables, and there are some properties which are different in all these three tables. So that's what we are going to talk about. So let's get started. So first table is temporary table. Temporary table, as name suggests, you can create the table temporarily. Temporarily meaning when you are running a session, and suppose this is a one worksheet which is one of a session. So when you are creating any new temporary table here in this session, that will be available only and only that session. So if you are trying to access that table from different session, then that will not be available. Once this session is completely destroyed, then data and table both will be purged from the Snowflake. So neither Snowflake or nor you can create or retrieve the data from that table. So let's look at the table, how we can create temporary table, and then we will try to access from different session. So each worksheet has its own session. So let's create one temporary table here right now. So normally to create a table, the syntax is like this. So but if you want to create temporary table, then just use like this, temporary. It's a keyword which you have to add before table. Then I'll just give the name like TMP and users. Okay, and as in previous video we used these values, so I will use the same age, number, and then if you create this table, it will automatically create temporary table, and that table will be available only in this session. So let's create another session by creating a new SQL worksheet, and they will try to access. So as you can see here, if you go here and see, table will not be available here. Let's see. So as you can, this is a original sheet, but if you see here in this, it should not be available. Okay, so as you can see here in the list, this temporary table is not available, but in original sheet where we have created, so for that particular session this table is still available, right? So this is called temporary table, and the major difference between these three tables is data retention and failsafe feature. So what is that failsafe and data retention feature is I will talk about after understanding these three types of tables. Okay, so this is the first type of table which you can use mostly when like you are running one script or transformation script, and in the transformation, suppose your query is not able to achieve something in just one query, then what you will do, you will run one query, probably store that result in temporary table, and then access from other query. So somehow it will be helpful in one procedure when you are transforming the data, and this data also available in that session for 1 day maximum. So you can definitely use this for transitory period. Same way, there is another table called transient table. So what is transient table then? Transient table is also very similar, but that table will be accessible from other sessions as well, and for that table the data retention also available only for 1 day, and there is no failsafe available for that kind of table. So how we can create transient table then? So similar to temporary, you just mention like this, transient table, and then I will see transient users. Okay, and I will just copy this two things. Right now, if you create this table, now that table will be available in both of the sessions now, because this is in reality it is similar to permanent table. The data will be persisted for longer period. Anytime you want to read the data will be available. But if anything happens to the data, you will not go back and recover the data. So that is called retention time. I will just talk about in a while once we complete these three all of the tables, and I will also mention what are those criteria and what are the number of days are available for each type of tables. Okay, now the third table is like create normal table. Like this is the permanent table which you can create, and it has the maximum retention period available, and the fail-safe period also is available for this table. So just to create permanent table, you do not need to mention temporary or transient or any other keyword here. Okay, now you can just write like this, permissionless users like this. Okay, and I'll just copy, and I'll just show you the information for all of these three. Okay, now all three tables are created. Now how we can see some tables, like we can see some properties about those table, like using this tmp users, and it will show you, sorry, we have to mention in the string. Yeah, so as you can see, it has like this, temp user is the name, the database name, schema name, those are other information, but the main information is kind, and that is temporary. Now if you see retention time, it's 1 day, as I mentioned earlier, right? So for 1 day that data will be retained. So if anything happens within 6 minutes or maybe within an hour, something happens, if you want to recover the data, those will be available, but only in that session, not out of that session. So mostly whenever you are working on any worksheet, then this facility will be much more useful, right? So this is temporary table. Now let's see the transient table. So if you see transient table, it's very similar. Retention period is 1, and then kind is transient, but in this case at least you will be able to access the data outside of that session. So this data available throughout the system. It's not like only available in session. So that is one difference between these two tables. Okay, and then finally the another table called users, like this, and run it. So as you can see, this is just kind of table, it's nothing or temporary or something like that. It still shows retention time is 1 because by default it is set to 1, but if you can you can change the retention time while creating the table. Even you can change that afterwards as well. So suppose I have created this permanent table without mentioning any retention time period, but if I create something like this, let me create one more like this. Suppose I give it 7. Okay, now if I mention here like data retention time in days, okay, and if you mention 7, then it will create that new table, and if you see here, now it should have 7 days. See, so now as we have already talked about all three types of table, let me talk about what is a fail-safe period and what is data retention time period. So fail-safe is something, if anything happens to your table or something happened wrong and you want to recover the data, right? So what you will do, using the fail-safe, you can ask Snowflake that I want to recover this data for last, so the point of time maybe 2 days back data I want to recover. Okay, so you can ask Snowflake about that, because fail-safe period is there, but data is not recoverable by user, that will be only recoverable by Snowflake. So that is fail-safe period, and that fail-safe period is available for temporary table? No, not at all. So if you see, fail-safe period for temporary table is 0. Then fail-safe period for transient transient table is also 0. You cannot have fail-safe facility available for transient tables, but for permanent table, fail-safe period is available, and that is 7 days maximum or minimum. There is no configuration for that. that is by default 7 days. Now the second thing is data retention period. So what is data retention period then? So it's very similar to failsafe, but this time this failsafe data retention period, you can recover the data by yourself, and that is called time traveling. Suppose if you have time retention period of 10 days, right, then you cannot go travel back to 11 days back and retrieve the data, right? So you want to see the snapshot how the data was looking at 11 days back, then you will not be able to recover that, you will not be able to see that. But as the data retention period is 10 days, then you can definitely go and check up to 10 days. Probably you want to check 5 days back, right? So you can definitely go and travel back to that using some queries. We'll definitely talk about that in next video, probably, that how we can use time traveling to recover the data, and we see all those information, okay, and we will talk about all the queries. But that is called data retention period. Okay, now what is the data retention period is available for temporary table. So as I mentioned, that is only 1 day, and maximum is 1 day and minimum is 0 day. So you can definitely set to 0 if you do not want to. So there are some scenarios where you do not want to have any data retention policy because the table is not that much useful, or you do not want to have any recovery period. If anything happens to that table, you are fine with that, right? So you can have set to 0, and same thing for transient table as well. So both has similar configuration, 0 or 1. Now in case of permanent table, there are multiple additions, like let me show like this. So there is addition type. So suppose, yeah, so here you can see the addition is enterprise. So if you remember in first video, I have showed you that while signing up, you can set the standard or enterprise or any other edition. So if you have selected standard edition, that means you will have 0 or 1 day. So minimum is 0 and maximum is 1 day. But in enterprise case or above editions, you have that availability of 90 days of period. So till 90 days you can go back and retrieve the data. So that is really good for large companies who want to have something like this, right? So 90 plus 7 days failsafe, so you are good for last 97 days of data. So anything happens bad, you can recover back any point of time and go back to good state, right? So this is good use case of this period. So yeah, that's all from this video. I wanted to talk about all those 3 table types. Yeah, of course there is one more table type called external table, but for that matter I will have a completely separate video, because external table is not the really storing the data here, it's just logical structure here. Otherwise it is copying and reading the data from outside storage, right? So we'll talk about that in some other video. So that's all from this video. Thank you very much for watching this video, and see you soon in the next one.